I need a lot of yarn for this channel. I buy most of my yarn online, but sometimes I have an idea and I want to be able to go to the store and just buy yarn so that I can make it in that weekend instead of waiting for things to ship. There aren't many places where you can just buy yarn anymore. Now that Joann's has filed for bankruptcy, who knows how long they're going to be around, and local yarn stores can be really expensive, but Walmart has yarn. So I'm going to go check it out and see which of their yarns are suitable for the Lk-150, this beginner-friendly knitting machine. Here we are at my Walmart. The craft section here is not great, and there is never anyone at the fabric counter, but we're going to see how this goes. And some dinner. I'm back from Walmart. Ooh. They had a surprisingly good selection. The craft department at that Walmart is usually pretty picked over, but I was surprised by how good it was this time. So I didn't get one of everything. I just got the ones that I thought I might be able to get to work on this knitting machine. There were a lot of like fuzzy blanket yarns that were very chunky and no amount of magic would get them to work on this machine. I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13 different yarns. And some of these follow the yarn rules and some of them do not. But we're gonna see what will knit on my Lk-150. So this knitting machine that you cannot see because the yarn is in the way, this is the knitting machine that I recommend for beginners. It is easy to learn, it works with most hand knitting yarns, and you can just buy one on Amazon. If you're interested in getting one of these, there's a playlist in the description with an unboxing for this machine and a bunch of beginner tutorials to help you get started. Some of these follow the yarn rules and some of them do not. As a reminder, for a mid-gauge machine like the Lk-150, the yarn rules are yarn weights 2 and 3 and acrylic or wool fibers. You can of course break these rules, and I'm going to show you how to do that today, but we're going to start with the yarns that don't break the rules and then move on to the yarns that do. So let me make 2 piles. You're good. Good. You're not. Did I only get 1 yarn that follows the rules? Okay, I have 2 yarns that follow the rules and the rest of them do not. Okay, let's get started. I have linked all of these in the YouTube shopping tool below, so if you want to check them out for yourself, you can. This is Bernat Baby Sport. It is an acrylic yarn of weight 3 in color Funny Prints. This skein needs to be caked, so it'll feed nicely through the knitting machine. This is a jumbo ball winder, and there's a link to this in the shopping thing. This is how we turn skeins into cakes, and this one is big enough to handle a whole 1-pound skein. So we feed it through the thingies, and then through the thingies, and then we wind. Okay, maybe we wind a little differently. I tuck the tail end into the skein so it won't unravel, and then put the yarn band in the center. This is my standard every other needle cast on. Hang some weight, and then bring out the rest of the needles. I mark my tension with eyelets so that I can recreate this swatch later. This is a latch hook bind off. So here's the swatch after it came out of the wash. This got a lot softer in the wash. I'm really happy with this one. This is a good fit for the machine, like the weight is good for the machine, and this yarn comes in massive cakes, so it would be great for beginners. The only problem is that because it's a baby yarn, It only comes in like pastel and light baby colors, but that's fine when you're learning, and it would be great for spring. So highly recommend this one. This is Lion brand mandala yarn. It is a weight 3 acrylic yarn in color Nifflers. It is very soft. This doesn't need to be caked because it's already in cake form. Let's see if it'll work on my Lk-150. Here's the swatch after it's been washed. This is so soft. This would make a great sweater, and it knit really well on the machine, and you can just throw it in the wash, so it's nice and easy to work with. I recommend this one for beginners. This is Lion brand Kobu. It is a weight 3 cotton rayon yarn. It's called Kobu because the rayon is made from bamboo. It is in color steel blue. This doesn't need to be caked because it's already in cake form. Let's see if it'll work on my Lk-150. Here's the swatch after it's been washed. This is not quite what I expected. Rayon has some lovely drape, and so does this, and the cotton doesn't really interfere with that. It's a decent weight for the machine, and it'd be great for summer items because rayon doesn't really get hot and sweaty. And it is very soft. And it is made from bamboo, but it's still very much a synthetic. All rayon starts with some kind of paper pulp. Yeah, I think this would be good for like some kind of lacy summer top that's nice and drapey and cool. This is Mainstays cotton yarn. It is weight 4 and 100% cotton in color blue shell. This is the Walmart brand, and this is actually fairly soft for 100% cotton. This needs to be caked before we can knit with it, so it'll feed nicely on the machine. Let's see if it'll work with my Lk-150. This really needs more weight. Here's the swatch after it's been washed. This one was really surprising to me because cotton is usually pretty rough, but this is very soft. This is the softest I've seen 100% cotton before. This would be really good for summer items or like home decor because it is cotton and you can just toss it in the wash. This is another example of why you need to swatch, because coming off the machine it was much bigger, but now that it's been through the washer and the dryer, it has shrunk up significantly. This is Peaches and Cream, weight 4, 100% cotton yarn. It's unmercerized, so it's pretty rough. It's in color Sunshine, and this comes in a bunch of different colors and on cones if you want a lot of it. This doesn't need to be caked because it's already in cake form, so let's see if it'll work on the Lk-150. This needs a lot more weight. Here's the swatch after it has been washed and dried. This is about what I'd expect from 100% cotton. It is very rough and coarse. This kind of yarn is usually used to make dish towels and kitchen items, and it's great for that because cotton holds up well in the wash, but it did shrink down a lot. If I were to work with this, I'd want to swatch on every other needle and try to find something a little bit looser. That being said, it's still a decent option for summer items, especially if you do something lacy with like transfer lace, because it's going to be very cool and it'll let the breeze through. And this comes in a lot of colors, so if you want to experiment, it'll be easy. This is Mainstays Anti-Pill Acrylic. It is a weight 4 acrylic yarn. This is the Walmart brand. This needs to be caked, so it'll feed nicely through the machine. So let's see if it'll knit on my Lk-150. Uh-oh, Jesus. Why are you being so difficult? The yarn is broken in the middle of the skein. Look at how much of it is left. Yep, needs more weight. Here is the swatch after it's been washed and dried. It's okay. It's a little big for the machine, and if you want to knit with a yarn this weight, you'll need much more weight than you would for a smaller weight yarn. I have links to where you can find more weights for the Lk-150 in the description, but I can't recommend this yarn because the skein was such a mess and had a bunch of broken pieces in it, and it was hard to cake up. So it's not easy to work with. This is Mainstays acrylic yarn. That's all they're calling it. It is a weight 4 acrylic yarn in color green. This is the Walmart brand, and I can already see a knot in this, and it is not the softest yarn, so we'll see how it goes. But this needs to be caked before to work on the knitting machine, so let's see if it'll knit on my Lk-150. Here's the swatch after it's been washed and dried. This was a little tricky to work with on the machine, and you'll need a lot more weight than you normally would for this kind of yarn, and I'll link to where you can find more weights for the Lk-150 in the description. It softened up a lot in the wash, and in its raw state, I would say I would not put this against my skin, like I wouldn't want this on a sweater, but after it's been washed, it softened up a lot. So I think it'd be decent for a sweater. I wouldn't recommend it for beginners because it is a little too thick for the machine, and it's difficult when you're still learning to figure out if the problem is you or the yarn or the machine. So I'd say wait until you're a little more advanced to work with something like this. But it's a decent option for a sweater. This is another Lion brand mandala. This one is a weight 4. The other one was a weight 3. It's 100% acrylic. Oh, this is the plain mandala, and this is the mandala ombre. That's why they're different. It is very soft. Here's the swatch after it's been washed. I think that if I were to make another swatch of this, I would go a little bit bigger because this is a little dense. But I love like the hand painted look that it's got. It looks like hand dyed yarn that you'd find on Etsy, but it's significantly less expensive. So this would be great for like summer or fall sweaters. You have to do a little planning to make sure the stripes come out the way that you want them to, but it'll work well on this machine. This is Lion Brand Wool Ease Recycle. It is a weight for 80% acrylic, 20% wool yarn in color black. This needs to be caked so it'll feed nicely through the machine. Let's see if it will knit on my Lk-150. Here's the swatch after it has been washed. This is a wool blend, but according to the label, it's fine in the wash, and it turned out fine. There's no felting. It's fine. Like, it's nothing special. It knits well on the machine. If you want to work with wool, this is a good option because it's less expensive than like 100% wool and it's recycled, so you can feel good about yourself while you're using it. This would be good for warmer items like winter sweaters. Yeah, it's not a bad option. This is Premier Puzzle yarn. It is a weight 5 acrylic yarn. It is very soft, and it's in color Hangman. This needs to be caked before we can work with it. Let's see if it'll knit on my Lk-150. I'm going to knit on every other needle, so my cast on is every 4th needle. And then I'm bringing the rest of the needles forward. The stitches are stretched out, but when I pull on the swatch, they even out. Here is the swatch after it has been washed and dried. This is very soft, and I think it'd be great for all kinds of garments. The only problem is that I had to knit on every other needle, and I need a much larger swatch to get a decent gauge for this because working on every other needle creates interesting gauges. The swatches are a little shorter than you'd expect them to be. I need a lot of weight to get it to knit correctly. But it'd be good for like a blanket or even a sweater. This is not yarn at all. This is nylon crochet thread, size 18. I don't know what that translates to in yarn weights, but we're gonna see if it'll knit. It is 100% nylon in color red. This probably doesn't need to be caked, so we're gonna see how it knits. It might feed nicely from the outside of this skein. That is not a good sign. I'm not sure what went wrong here, but when I tried to reset the carriage, I dropped a bunch of stitches. This is a swatch, so I'm just going to start over. There we go. That's a little better. The cast-on comb didn't quite catch all of the stitches. If I go at a very specific speed, it feeds nicely. This yarn doesn't stretch, so my latch hook tool isn't even going to get through these live stitches. Let me try knitting a few more rows at a looser tension. And it didn't want to knit. I don't want to force it and break anything, so I'm going to remove the carriage and try again. There we go, that's better, except for this skein falling over. Now I can bind off. Here's the swatch after it has been washed and dried. This one was really weird. It doesn't stretch the way that a knit normally would, and part of that is the fiber, and part of that is that this swatch is a little too dense. Like, this needs to be swatched on a much looser tension, but it was really hard to work with. This kind of skein does not feed nicely. It would have to be caked if you really wanted to work with it. But it's like this dense fabric, and I wouldn't make clothing out of this. But it might be interesting for home decor. Like, just looking at it, the nylon has a bit of a sheen, so maybe something like a Christmas tree skirt would be interesting. But I wouldn't recommend it for beginners. This is the kind of thing that you really have to be interested in and spend a lot of time swatching and learning how the yarn behaves before you make something out of it. This is the other crochet thread. This is Red Heart Classic Crochet Thread in number 10. It's thinner than the 18, in color white, and it is cotton, 100% cotton. But this is mercerized. That means it's been treated so it's a little smoother. This might need to be caked because of the way that it wraps around the tube in there, but we're gonna see how it knits. You know what, this does need to be caked. I take that back. I'm gonna cake this. Let's see how it knits on my Lk-150. Here's the swatch after it has been washed and dried. As you can see, it parallelogrammed. So instead of being a rectangle the way that it was when we knit it, it is now behaving like this. This happens when there's a little bit too much twist to the yarn. I've had this happen with other yarns, and I don't know if this is a common problem with all crochet thread or it's just this one. You might be able to block it and get it back to be something rectangular, but the cotton did shrink up significantly in the wash. I think if I were going to work with this, I would knit on a much looser tension and make something like light and airy and lacy, and maybe some kind of lacy beaded summer top, or even like a bathing suit cover. It would be interesting. But you really have to work with it to see how you can get it to not parallelogram, or at least to stay in its final state after you've blocked it. The one you've all been waiting for, Red Heart Super Saver. This is a weight 4 100% acrylic yarn. This comes in a bunch of colors, including very bright ones, and it's not very soft, but it is softer than Red Heart Super Saver that I saw 10 years ago, so they're making progress. This is in color Amethyst. This needs to be caked before we can work with it, so let's see how it knits on my Lk-150. Here is the swatch after it's been washed and dried. This was a little too thick for the machine. It definitely needs a lot more weight than you'd expect for a thinner yarn, and I will link to where you can find more weights in the description. But it softened up a lot in the wash. The last time I worked with this yarn was about 10 years ago, and it was very scratchy, but this is, I think, decent enough for a sweater, or like It'd be great for home decor because this comes in a lot of colors. So those are my swatches. That is my survey of what was available at my Walmart. I highly recommend the baby yarn because it would be so easy to work with, and it comes in these massive skeins, so it's great for beginners. And I was like pleasingly surprised by the mandala stuff. I've always seen this but never actually worked with it, and it would take a little bit of planning to get the stripes where you wanted if you're making a whole sweater, but like on a one-piece shawl or like a bit of home decor like a blanket or a pillowcase, this would be lovely. And it is so soft. So this one is weight 3 and this one is weight 4. And I like the way this looks with like the marled, hand-painted, hand-dyed look, but it is more expensive than the other one. So keep that in mind. The cottons were also surprising. Well, so the plain kitchen cotton, this is exactly what I expected it to be. It had some problems because the loops get stuck between the gate peg things on my machine, and it required a lot of yarn to be able to knit nicely and have it come down. But then the Walmart brand cotton just had similar problems, but it's much softer, which I hadn't expected, and it's a little bit thinner of a yarn. So if you're choosing cotton for something to wear, I'd recommend the Walmart brand because it is so much softer, but if you want like sturdy kitchen items, go with this one. And then the Kobu, which is a cotton blend, a cotton bamboo rayon blend. This is a much better option for garments because it is so soft and it is so drapey, and it'd make great summer items. These two. So this is the Red Heart Super Saver, which is everywhere and is very cheap. And this is the Walmart equivalent, essentially. If you gave me 2 cakes of this and didn't tell me which was which, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference. They are very similar, and the Walmart brand is a little bit cheaper. So if you want something economical, go with the Walmart brand, but the Red Heart Super Saver, the name brand, comes in a lot more colors and a lot more brighter colors. But there were versions of the Walmart brand that had sparkle in them, so I think that'd be interesting. This was the thickest yarn that I worked with, and I was able to get it to knit on the machine, but only on every other needle, and that is the big trick to working with thicker yarns on machines like this. It's a little tricky to work with, but it's definitely doable, and I think this would be great for a blanket or some other home decor. The crochet thread was really interesting. So first let's talk about the thin one. It parallelogrammed. Like, it's not going to be easy to work with. It's not going to be easy to keep it in its final shape unless you make something that doesn't really matter. Like, it'd be good for a beach cover-up where it doesn't really matter what it looks like. It just kind of covers you up. And it was really hard to cake. If you can find crochet thread that works with like some kind of center pull ball, it's a much better option than this Red Heart version. The skein was like rolling all around my kitchen floor as I tried to cake it. And then this one is just, it's so weird. I have never seen a yarn behave like this. I mean, it's just not really yarn, it's more thread. And it's got a bit of sheen because of the synthetic content in it. And I feel the need to explore this more because I want to understand how it behaves and like what I could make with it because it is so interesting and different. But I would not recommend it for beginners because in this format, it would not feed nicely. And here we go. The only one that I'm gonna say, do not buy this. This is the anti-pilling one that is the Walmart brand. And the skein was a mess. I couldn't cake it very easily. Like, there was no way to find a center pull from it. And then like the yarn, it's okay. I don't know if the anti-pilling thing actually holds up. I'd have to make something with it and wear it for a long while to find that out, but don't buy this one. So there we go. We have 12 yarns that I tried on the Lk-150 that came from Walmart. And these are all fairly reasonably priced, and I have linked them all in the YouTube shopping tool if you want to check them out for yourself. I'm glad I went through this process. I learned a lot about the yarns that are available near me and what works on my machine and what doesn't, and this is going to help me pick yarns for projects in the future. And I hope that you got something out of this as well. There's not enough of any one yarn or any one weight to make anything out of these, but I do have plans for the leftovers from this project, so please subscribe and stick around to see those when they're ready. Let me know if there are any other yarn collections or inventories that you want me to review on the Lk-150 or any of my other machines. I have a standard gauge machine, which most of the vintage machines are standard gauge, and then a bulky machine, which can knit stuff like this pretty easily. Thanks for watching. Happy knitting! We get the Red Heart logo there. I want the Mainstays logo. That looks terrible. Mandala? Okie doke.